feel like we all sound like a bunch of like slightly
It's been a
exhausted
long
people
day.
trying to do a podcast.
and it was such a light read, you know, like
I know that was part of my like, oh god.
We'll get into that.
Yeah.
Welcome to Waiting on the Trade, a comics book club for people who can't keep up with monthly comics. I am Matt Ledger.
I'm Patrick Fitzgerald Fleck.
And I'm Tyler Marifke.
This month we're talking about the first volume of Scalped, a gritty Native American crime drama from writer Jason Aaron, artist R.M. Guerra, colorist Lee Lowridge, and letterer Phil Balsman. Now, in case you need a refresher, Scalped is the story of Dashiell Bad Horse's return to the Prairie Rose Indian Reservation after 15 years away. During his absence, Dash has become a hard man, hard enough to earn a spot working for tribal leader and local crime boss Lincoln Red Crow. But Dash also has a secret, one that threatens to turn the entire res upside down. I feel like that was a light and breezy tone for the introduction to a book that is not light and breezy at all.
Yeah.
If I cared enough, we'd redo it, but we don't have that kind of time.
No, we don't. No. But also, if we didn't take this one a little bit less serious, this would be a pretty depressing episode.
So first off, Tyler, welcome back to the podcast.
Yeah, no, good to be here. Good to be here.
I guess my first kickoff question was going to be, are you excited to talk about your first non-superhero book on the podcast?
I am. I should say that makes me want to it sounds like I'm underselling it. It was certainly a change of pace, though. I will say that. I know you're going to be like, "Hey, how did you come up with doing this book?" But those who have listened to the podcast long enough know that if it says Jason Aaron on the byline, I'm pretty much in. And Matt was kind enough to gift this to me. It was like a year or two ago for Christmas, which was very nice. And when we couldn't come up with any ideas to what to read, I was like, what I have lying around that I really need to get to reading all of it was Scalped. But I did not know what I was totally getting myself into, and
this one is on me, and I am testing the bounds of the criteria that says I will read anything by Jason Aaron. Specifically pushing the limits.
Yeah.
Because I really like this book. This book is like as a run, which is like, I'm going to look over at the bookshelf here. Hang on a sec. 10 volumes. It's like a 10-volume run. Yeah, and we read volume 1 for the podcast, obviously. This
stretches
series,
10 volumes? Wow.
This series as a whole is an all-timer for me. I really love this series.
Wow.
So we'll get into it. I think this intro is also, I wouldn't go so far as to say like masterclass in laying the groundwork for a story, but like I think it very deftly introduces you to a lot of characters, their going concerns, their secrets, why they're as fucked up as they are. Like in a very quick amount of time, in a very condensed way that lets you get them. And not a book that you really, and this is where I thought potentially you, especially Pat, might have a hang up, is like it's not a book where you like the characters so much.
You keep setting me up, listeners. It's not fair. One of these times I won't be the wet blanket. It's going to be great.
But I think this book's really good. Like on the back of the first volume, it talks about like basically being like a Sopranos style organized crime drama. And I think that's actually like a really good pitch for it. Like Sopranos on the res is not a bad pitch for this book. Like we're definitely playing around and this came out in like 2007. So we're playing around in the time when like HBO long form dramas, like that sort of thing, were just like kind of the going concern and people were doing those sorts of stories. And so Jason Aaron brought this thing to Vertigo and they greenlit it and it ran for 10 volumes, I think 60 issues or so. I think I want to say 60 issues.
That sounds right because I was looking it up after the fact.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, which is like
until 2012.
Yeah, like which is a solid Vertigo run. Like I feel like a lot of writers in that time period were like trying to get their like 50 to 75 issue Vertigo series off the ground at some point, and Jason Aaron and co did it. But yeah, how did you guys find this book? Like, what did you think about it? I guess I'll have Tyler go first since he's the guest.
Well, first, I also am setting up Pat a little bit because multiple times I've brought on like, normal Marvel stuff, like, and Pat goes, "I'm pretty sure I just don't like comic books," and I went, he's gonna love this. This is gonna be great. This is totally Pat's thing. I would say, and this is gonna make sense if you have when you read it, if you read it. I think I really started to like it when the pages turned blue. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yeah, I
Um,
think that
The
I
past
like
stuff.
I like that statement.
Yep. So like when you're actually like flipping through the pages, like the first 3 issues, is it 3 or 4 issues?
Yeah, the first I
Uh,
think I think we're on 5 issues in this volume, and the first 3 are like the intro arc,
yeah,
which I think is actually called Indian Country. I'm not sure, and then the second one is 2 issues, and it's called Hokahay, I
yeah, that
believe.
that sounds right. But like, there's a definite like tone of like the coloring that changes when the backstory stops and the current events start happening. And I thought that was cool. So like all the backstory does build up very quickly, almost to the point where I was like, this is a lot to take in, almost too much, and where's it going with all this? Like it's information overload, but it gives you enough of a snapshot of everybody to be like, okay, I see where there might be some webs intertwined here, and some of it's not a surprise, some of it is. Like I don't know how spoilery we want to get,
Oh,
but
we're
like,
going for it because like
yeah,
the end of the first issue is like one of my favorite last pages of a comic series because I think it's just like such a good setup and then like a rug pull of like no, this is actually what's happening because like you think you know what's happening throughout the whole first issue of the book, and then that last page kind of just throws you for a complete loop. I feel like at least, but
of the first chapter or of the
yeah, just the very first, what would be like the first single issue. Yeah, the first chapter.
yeah, no, yeah, because you think he's just some guy like, and it's like, JK, he's a federal agent. What? And
What?
then like, because you're like, okay, big bad crime boss. Of course, he's got some relation to him or whatever, and like, I'm sure he's the mom's got a history, and then there's the daughter, and you're like, okay, I can kind of see where all this is going, and he's just bad. But then it's like, JK, he's undercover, like he's trying to get in here on purpose, and it's like, what the hell? That was huge. But then, um, and then there's a lot of the setup of some of the side characters, like two of my favorite character names in the history of comic books. Officer Falls Down and Poor Bear.
Poor bear.
That's just great. And like those two are just such opposites of all the other ultra intense super.
Right? It's just like Officer Falls Down is just like trying his best to be a good cop,
Yeah,
like on the res where like being a good cop feels impossible.
yeah. And the kid who's like, I just want to get my car fixed. I'm sorry, I don't want to be at this drug house. Please don't kill me. Like, and like he's in earnest, getting like a job at the casino and all this good stuff. Like that, those two characters are great. But um, the reason I say when the I think I started to enjoy it more was like the second part when the pages turned blue, as I say, is it slowed it down and started to like flesh out more. So
Yeah,
like
that makes sense.
those first 3 chapters, I'm like, boy, this is some breakneck pace stuff. Like there's no way they can keep this going. And at the time, I hadn't looked up how long this run was or anything along those
Yeah.
lines. Went into it as blind as I could, and that last page with the mom being scalped. Spoilers. Uh,
Again,
I just went,
we were doing spoilers for the whole thing at
Yeah,
this
no
point.
yeah,
worries.
We may even end up on spoilers for later in the series. We'll see. I'm
yeah,
gonna try to keep those to a minimum, but
yeah. I literally went on Amazon to see where I could get the next copy, because I was like, okay,
oh
now
hell
I want
yeah.
to know. Now I want to know, which is going to answer the question later on down the road of would you suggest this? Absolutely, I would. But yeah,
Oh, God,
this
like, if you liked it at all, anyone listening, anyone talking in the conversation, please read the rest of the fucking book. It's so
yeah,
good.
yeah. It will test you though early. That part I am not going to say wasn't true. Like um and I think for me what it was is everything Jason Aaron that I've read has always been Marvel. Right? It's always been PG essentially, right? Like
Sure.
Yeah,
the
like, some of the Thor stuff gets to the point where, like, people's arms are getting cut off or whatever, but it's not, like, super graphic violent, it's, like,
right,
comic booky graphic violent, right? Like,
yeah, and even his Ghost Rider run, like there wasn't that much grotesque stuff going on, like where they could, right? Like some of the stuff kind of got a little crazy, but it was never like straight up like shotguns to the face and all that good stuff. Like this one was like, oh, we're going there. We ain't messing around. Like
yeah,
we're
we have no real guardrails in place for the most
yeah.
part here.
You know, and how well you can stomach some choice language and I don't know what the correct words would be but
I mean,
they're
a lot of
using
violence.
colorful language, right? Like and a lot of I don't know
I
if
mean,
slurs
literally
is
when
the
you're
correct word, but
introduced to, like, Red Crow, he has just scalped someone in his
yeah,
office and the
right,
dude's
just right
bleeding
there.
out from the head.
Yeah, puts the match out that he's lighting his cigar with in the blood, right? Like it's like stuff like that. And then of course the rampant sex scene at the end of it, right? Like you're just like, okay, I was not ready for this a little bit, but um, at the same time, props to Jason Aaron because this was him with no filter, right? Like it was like you can literally say whatever you want, and it was compelling. Where when I got introduced to him, it was through Ghost Rider and through Thor, where you're reined in quite a bit of like here's a lore, here's all this stuff that you got to base your writing off of. Now he does a lot of universe rebuilding, but that's a
Yeah,
different
but,
conversation for a different
it's
day.
a toy box and it's someone else's toys, right? Whereas this is,
Exactly.
like, it's all yours, you can do basically whatever you want within reason. Like, I think even Vertigo has some amount of limits, or did have, well, Vertigo's back now, so celebrate that, that's awesome, but
But yeah,
um,
that I think those first three comics, if you can get through it and not be completely turned off, it sets it up perfectly, like for you to start to care. And then at the end of this volume, when the last page is that scene of Gina in the desert, you go, "Oh, oh no, we're not messing around. Like this is something big." So yeah, definitely interesting foray into the non-superhero world of comics, but I'm not disappointed by it.
nice. I have follow-up questions, but I wanna let Pat get some of his thoughts in before we move on. Pat, how did you generally find the book?
I found it okay.
Alright, fair.
I don't know. Maybe just not in the right mindset for it. It's a very bleak, very nihilistic story. And maybe I just wasn't in the right space for that.
Yeah, I could see that, it's been a year.
It has been a year. I don't know. It's
Yeah.
also at least the setup for the story. I have read or watched things that have the same premise of the res, and there's a corrupt leader who's opening, guess what, a casino, and all the corruption that goes along with that, and all the money coming in, and all the people want a piece of it. It just felt like I had seen the story before. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Like, I have not really encountered, but like you saying that, like I understand that it is like it's a conceit, right? I think
Sure.
potentially what puts it over for me then would be like the twist kind of where it's like you think it's kind of doing just like he's a hard guy and he's back on the res after 15 years away, but like
Sure.
actually he's kind of there to like blow the whole thing up and has somehow been coerced into doing that, which we haven't found out yet. Like, I don't know. I think there's enough ties between characters and also like secrets being like
Yeah.
shown or not shown that it becomes compelling for me. But I will give
I
you
think,
that like
go ahead, say.
I was just saying like talked about how it's like kind of came in during that like HBO long form drama era, and
Yeah,
I think your critique that like it's one of those kind of, and like it
sure.
follows a lot of the same beats of things that you've seen before. That makes sense to me.
It kind of reminded me of the show Banshee. I don't know if you guys ever
I don't think
seen
so.
that or
No,
heard of it, but it kind of had that feel to it, where it was like the backstory of Banshee is different in the sense that this hardened criminal accidentally kills a sheriff and then steals his identity, and then plays him in a small town, and it turns out that this small Amish town that he's in is actually like this super corrupt, everybody's like killing each other, ridiculous stuff, and then he has to turn into a good guy while hiding the secret that he murdered the sheriff that he's acting as. Not 100% that, but it does kind of have that same feel of ultra violence, bleak. None of this is actually going to have a happy ending
Sure.
that show had. So I agree with Pat in the sense that as I was reading it, I was kind of like, oh, undercover cop who doesn't actually want to be a cop. Well, okay, I've seen this song and dance before.
I think I had similar issues with, like, I don't know. People really, it's Concession, right? Is that what it is? Succession? That's what it is.
Succession,
Not
yeah,
Concession, Succession.
yeah, Succession, yeah.
Is the really popular show. Everyone loves the writing, the acting. Is it amazing? We watched a couple episodes together at one point.
At least the first one we did, and then yeah, I've watched all of it, and I think you've watched none of it since then.
No, I've
Where we
watched any
broke on
beyond that. And like Breaking Bad, like those shows that are just well told, well acted, but it's shitty people doing shitty things to each other, and it's just like it's such a downer. I don't know. I just can't. I think I really need to be in the right space to enjoy that kind of thing. And I just didn't have anyone I connected to in this story. Like, I hate Dash. He's a piece of shit.
Yeah, he's
like,
kind of a piece of shit.
The only one that maybe had like, I mean, Poor Bear's fine and falls down, is doing the best he can. So those are great, but you don't really see him very much. His mom, I sort of like wanted to sympathize, but then you see that no, she was horrible to him as a child. So like, there isn't a redeeming character other than those two side characters we talked about. So when they like reveal things or like horrible things happen, it's like, I don't care as much as I could.
Yeah,
like there isn't like a grounding of like, the res seems to be a shithole from what Jason is showed. And like, I don't know if there were like scenes where like people were just living life, that there were people on the res that were worth like, I don't know. It's all shitty people doing shitty things, so it's hard for me to care.
I will say, giving you like a statement that you've given to me or whatever, where you're like, oh, you just gotta get through season 1 and get to
Sure,
season 2.
yeah,
Season
yeah.
2 is great. Like, there is more stuff like that later on, including
Okay.
like there's one specific single issue that's about just like an older couple that lives off the like. It's not in the main res, at least. Like they live kind of off by themselves, and like that's one of the more like touching
Okay.
issues of the story. So like,
Yeah,
those
because
exist.
I just need something to like okay, there are decent people trying to get by in this place. It's not all
And I want to tell
crack
you
dens and
that
stuff.
that Dean's story is good, but I'm not sure. I'm trying to remember specifically all of his highs and lows. And there are definitely some lows. I will give you that.
Sure.
But yeah, I see that as like a valid critique, and that's kind of what I was thinking about coming into this, because I was thinking about Succession specifically, and like when we watched it, and like I was like, oh, I'm gonna watch this, and you were like, no, I'm not. And I think what gets it over for me is just like if the characters' bad choices are compelling enough and like made for compelling enough reasons. So like
Sure.
we were talking about Dash's mom, right? And like how she kind of just like not abandoned him, obviously, but like kind of just
Didn't
like
prioritize him.
was busy doing
pretty
other
damn
stuff.
close,
Like
right?
and then like shipped him away at age 13.
Yeah.
And like I don't think those like the choices are understandable but clearly wrong, right? And like that's the stuff that's
Sure.
more compelling to me. Um, I was just talking to some coworkers about It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, and that's a show I can't watch because I don't like any of the characters.
Sure.
And I think that one
Sa-
doesn't fly for me because like those people are all just idiots also.
Yeah.
It's same idea though, right? Like it's terrible people doing terrible things, but to a comedic effect, right?
Yeah.
Like where
Yeah.
it's so cringeworthy you almost have to laugh. But I like so I struggle watching uh It's Always Sunny and Curb Your Enthusiasm
Yeah.
because they're so they've ground it in such reality that you're like, oh no, like these people exist,
This
right?
is
Like
awful. No, I don't want
these aren't
this.
these aren't like fake anymore, right? Like this is like real people, and then it just
Yeah,
makes you
I
feel
want like
terrible about.
slightly more compelling, like I don't know, like characterized, like nuanced versions of people making awful choices.
Yeah,
Like I
and I do agree with Pat too in this one. I found it hard to cheer for somebody, but same token, like you said, Matt, I just kind of want to see where it goes. It's like a train wreck where you can't look away. Um,
yeah,
as
you're just
opposed
watching all
to
these dominoes get set up and set up and set up, and you're like, all right, let's
yeah,
watch these suckers
I think
fall.
it's crazy that it goes for another 9 volumes. I don't I didn't think this hole was that deep that it would take so long to get to the bottom of it.
Oh yeah, it's I mean like so everyone the fun part is everyone in here gets some focus time, and then there are also more characters that also get focus time later
Sure.
on. Um,
Well, I mean, like, I like The Wire. You introduced me, and I fucking love The Wire. The Wire is great. But, like, in that one, there are people trying to do good things, and, like, you can have sympathy for even the people selling drugs in that. Because they're just, I don't have that sympathy in this one. Like, I don't really care for these characters.
there's
yeah, I think that's a legit comparison actually too. Like where in The Wire you've got more officer falls downs, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he is so far. Like I said, Falls Down and Poor Bear are the two characters I care most about in this, which is saying a lot. But also, I
Sure.
think they are the two that you need to care about because otherwise there wouldn't. Maybe the bartender too. Like he seemed pretty chill.
he's fine.
Towards the
I
end,
don't
Random bartender.
know.
yeah, the random bartender who was like, what did he say? Something like, people who drink this much are in here for two things: one, either to get revenge on somebody, or they did something wrong and they want to correct it. But if they
Yeah,
start
either
this
like
early,
want to forget something or want
Get
to
the
screw
courage
up
to
the
do
courage to do
something.
yeah,
something. Yeah.
Yeah.
and it's like, but once they start this early, they don't have the ability to do either. I thought that was great, but like, um, it definitely, I kind of, if I was going to liken it to anything like book wise,
Sure.
and I've never read them, but I know enough to kind of be dangerous. Would it lean like almost Game of Thrones, right? Like bad shit's gonna happen to everybody, but you continue to watch or continue to read anyways, right? Because it's
Yeah,
Sure.
I would say
like
it is like it's Game of Thrones-ish, but there are no Starks, I think is Pat's Pat's contention.
Or
sure,
just
yeah,
normal people, just the regular citizens. There aren't
yeah.
any.
And I think it points that out, right? Like the news is there, like interviewing him because they're opening the casino. Honestly, without giving away too much of where we are, because I don't know how much we worry about that doxing stuff on this show. But
Oh, yeah.
where I'm at, they just opened up a casino not far away.
Mhm.
It's a great casino. I've been there. I have not won anything yet. I have made just some cash donations to the fine folks down there. Uh, but they're opening another one
Mhm.
20 minutes closer in what is a
Lower income. Yeah.
lower
Yeah.
income area. And when they announced it, that was the first argument was like, are you sure? Are you sure this is the right city to do that in?
Mhm.
Um, so I like have almost like a real world. This is art imitating life. Of course, this came out. You know, I don't even because we graduated the years it came out, and I just feel sick if I say
It's
it.
so old. It's so old.
Yeah.
2007.
2007. I can't. There's so much gray in my beard at this point that is
It's
just
only
like
3 years away from 20, guys. Don't worry.
Yeah,
It's fine.
it's fine. It's okay. That the fact that this is happening and like I could see it happen in real time, and I'm still gonna go. I'm gonna make a nice cash donation to the fine folks of Ho Chunk, but it's kind of got that same similar feel. Like
Sure.
it's like, are you sure? Are you sure this is a good idea?
This is the
Like,
best
look
thing
at
we're
your-
gonna do.
Yeah, like, and they're like, yeah, you've got the highest alcoholism rate and the highest drug use, and meth is through the roof, and all this stuff, and right, and you're
think
gonna open
the,
a casino.
The one
Yeah.
like comic book writer Jason Aaronism that happens in here is when they go to Whitehaven, Nebraska, which is like just off the res, and that says like population 150, annual beer sales like 4 million or something.
Yeah.
I was like, I think that's the one like Jason Aaron comic book writer exaggeration. Hopefully, I hope it's not like 4 million cans of beer sold. Now,
I don't know. We're not far out of Milwaukee,
furiously
so like,
googling.
Yeah, this is Wisconsin. Be careful.
Yeah. But it does
Holy
not
shit,
paint a
hang
very.
on.
Uh-oh.
So the town of White Clay, Nebraska, which apparently has a population of 11 people, does sell 5 million cans of beer a year.
Yeah, so it was a lower estimate, actually.
Hang on, now I gotta flip to
You
the
lowballed
caption. You guys
It's 28 population with 4 million
It says
cans.
4 million cans. All right, well, fuck me, I guess.
Yeah. I don't know. It does paint a very bleak picture, and it does not have a lot of people to cheer for, but maybe that's also why you want to see what happens. Maybe there is some light at the end of this tunnel. And like I said, I was hooked after I saw that last page with the mom dead in the desert, which sounds like a weird thing to say when you say it out loud, but I want to know who got her. I want to know why it happened. She seemed like the good guy of the group, and I would like to know more. But I think the biggest question I have, I know Matt said he had some follow-up questions earlier, but there's one thing in this that I could not get over. What happened to the nunchucks?
Not taken away. Can't have
Yeah,
them
but they
anymore.
build them up. It's on the cover.
It's back.
He says he wants his nunchucks back. We are 6 episodes in now, or 6 issues in. No return of the nunchucks.
It's a little Chuck Norris for me. I don't know.
I'm just saying. What happened to those? What's the significance? He used every other weapon.
Issue 36 is actually the secret origin of the nunchucks. So no, I don't think that's true. Sorry, that was a joke.
That's
Studied
oddly specific.
with the monks.
Yeah, oddly specific. But
I have a
also,
flashback of all of his training. I'm trying to find that.
Oh yeah, it's in I think like issue 4 or 5 because it's after.
it's pretty
It's
late
near
in
the
game.
end. Yeah, I think it's in
the
5.
2 agents talking. Yeah.
So they're talking about like why he shouldn't be an FBI agent until Nitz is like, give him to me. I want him.
I do like that tie-in though. The fact that it's Nitz, right?
Yeah.
Is knew that they were guilty, like, and is this long been chasing him down. But you're like, okay, there's got to be something else, right? That he's going after because nobody holds the grudge that long. For
No, I love a dude who just cannot let go of a grudge. Love it. Give it to me all day long.
and I can't talk, right? Like I haven't had Culvers in a couple of years because they screwed me over one time at work. So like I get
30
it.
years. I'm gonna take you down, Frank Culver.
Yeah. Listen here, Craig. Listen here,
Your
Craig.
entire operation to the ground.
Yeah. I'll show you. I'm going to start my own restaurant and serve my own custard. Anyways, I don't think it's that extreme, but also, I just think it's pretty crazy how they connected that as opposed to just this guy's a hardened FBI agent who needed somebody on the inside. No, this is a guy who held a grudge and watched this kid from afar and all this stuff. And yeah, I thought that part was pretty cool. But
Just like
definitely you have to
ready
be in the
ready to
right
move
mood.
him into place like a little chess piece.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you guys, and we talked about this a little bit, in like
Mhm.
that the pacing slows down and becomes a bit different in the back two issues, but like how did you guys find the pacing overall? Like I think the first three issues are maybe a little bit too frantic with the cuts like back and forth in time, like especially issue 2 and 3. Issue 1 is pretty much like linear from front to back. But then 2 and 3 when he's both having the conversation with Nitz and whatever the other agent's name is, stupid handsome blonde guy.
Newsom. Yeah.
Newsom, yeah. Like he's having the conversation with them that's like in the quote unquote future, and also it's showing us like the previous week of his life. How did you guys find that pacing?
I was confused.
Okay.
Doing like the 5 days ago thing and jumping back and forth. I
Yeah,
kind of lost track of where we actually were and what was going
I mean,
on.
I did like that it was at least like converging towards like linearly converging towards the point that the other scenes were taking place in. But yeah, I think
Mhm.
that like when I first read it, I think that was my biggest like critique of the first arc was that it did feel a little bit like I don't know, a little bit overly frantic jumping back and forth in time like that of like, oh, where am I now? Oh, I'm back here. Oh, now I'm here.
Yeah.
Like that sort of thing.
And then during one of them, we jump even further back to his childhood, where his mother's forcing him to look at
Yeah.
a
Yeah,
corpse.
that's actually where the like flashback pages that Tyler was talking about start is like in issue 3, not issue 4 and 5 or whatever. Like it
Yeah.
starts in issue 3 and then kind of gets some space to expand and play out a little bit more slowly in 4 and 5, which I think Tyler had kind of talked about a little bit earlier of like it's nice that I think part of the reason issues 1 through 3 are so frantic is because it's trying to lay so much groundwork like so quickly. And then as it goes through the next, what, 57 issues or whatever, I feel like it is a slower series in some ways, at least.
Sure.
Don't have
Was this
encyclopedic memory, but
For sure.
except for when the nunchucks are introduced again? No. That's anyways. Was this like? I guess I wouldn't know. Without like getting some actual backstory, but you wonder a little bit if this was proof of concept too, right? Like the first three were like sell Vertigo on why we should
Mhm.
keep this going.
oh, for sure. And like
So a
I'm
lot of
sure like some amount of because these sorts of series, and I think you had a little bit more runway back in the day. Like there's not as much runway at this point in comics just because there's so many series coming out all the time. And like if your issue 1 doesn't sell and your issue 2 doesn't sell, like you're kind of like you gotta wrap this up. Like
yeah,
get this done by issue 5 or 6. Um, so it's possible that that's part of why it was a little bit like more packed together in issues 1 through 3, and then once they actually got the reception to it, you were like, oh, okay, we can take our time a little bit. We can stretch this thing. We can I don't know, have an actual run of story. So it's possible some of that is playing into.
because yeah, I think the first three, and like I kind of touched on it earlier, is so much information and so much pacing and so much back and forth and all that, and like it's a serious tonal shift when it gets to chapter 2 or whatever they call it,
Yeah.
or chapter 1 of like the second series. It like it just slows down to the point where it reads more like your normal monthly comic that none of us have time for, right, Matt?
Yeah.
And boy, if people only knew what we were talking about before Craig the recording showed up.
Just white knuckling the conceit of this podcast, let me tell you.
Yeah. But it starts to read more like a normal comic, right? It was almost like, okay, it's like the pilot episode of a show. Like, okay, yeah, this works. Now we're gonna flesh it out a little bit and give it room to breathe and grow. And it's just set up more story. Like the dude in the horse, with the horse, whoever he is, lightning guy.
Catcher, I believe.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
he gets kind of shown in the first couple pages, and then he's shown at the end and you're like, but I kind of forgot about that guy until just now.
I love
What's
Catcher just wandering around doing who the hell
yeah,
knows what throughout this whole
yeah,
story. Like he's just following Dash for like a week until he figures like he follows him to his FBI meet, so he's the only one who knows that Dash is FBI at this point.
right,
Um, and then like he has, and this I was going to talk about as far as pacing too, so it kind of fits in. Like I think part of the reason that reveal of Dash's mother having been like scalped and murdered hits as hard as it does too is because it comes right after that scene where Catcher's like, all three of us have to work together or the Rez isn't going to be able to survive this. And then
right.
immediately, immediately, nope.
But that felt more like your traditional comic, like that kind of swerve felt more unexpected and like I got to sell the next issue. Where the other swerves, as I wouldn't say shocking, because like him being an undercover FBI agent is like the hook, right? Like this is why you're reading this. Was shocking in a sense that okay, now I get what we're trying to do here. The other ones where it was like, oh, of course the daughter is, the love interest of the big bad guy, and the big bad guy has some sort of connection to the mother, and all this other, like, all that you could kind of see coming. I'm not gonna lie, like some of
Yeah,
that was,
it's not like Pat was saying earlier, like it's not
it's all been
super
done.
original.
Yeah, this is.
I would say I feel like the execution is done well, and that can make the difference in these sorts of cases. But
I'm not saying this is done poorly. It just does. It's done really fast,
yeah,
and you
Yeah.
kind of see it coming pretty quick.
yeah,
Yeah.
Like it doesn't really surprise you. But then at the end, when it's here's a 2-page monologue, 3-page monologue of this weird guy riding around on a horse, like kind of giving
just
these,
doing a shot naked in his house.
yeah, we've all been there, and it's so stupid. Probably don't need to tell people that I'm sober now. It's cool. Like doing that, and then that big twist at the end. It just felt more. This is an ongoing series. We need to sell next month's comic. Here's why you need to come back. Where the other ones were, trust us, this is going somewhere. Trust
Yeah,
us, it
Yeah.
will.
We don't know anything about Catcher other than like we see him obviously in the very beginning. He's seeing Dash come into town. It's like, oh look, it's Dash. And then we see him. I don't think we see him in the flashback when the agents are killed. Maybe we do.
I think you do technically see him.
I went back and tried to figure out
Definitely
who was
not the
there.
focus of it.
Yeah, and then he's definitely in the scene where they're in the restaurant after
Yeah.
the trial. And he doesn't really react to anything. He's just being sort of weird.
Dude's doing shots naked in his house.
Yeah, and then we
So
see
I
we
feel like
flash
he's
back and
probably
he's
just a
like
weird dude, anyways. So it's probably.
and he's
Nothing.
got the conspiracy wall going on, which is never
Yeah.
a good sign.
No.
Oh, the murder board, get it right.
With a bunch of weapons across from it. So Catcher's up to something. I don't know.
Oh, intriguing. You have to read on to find
Quite.
out, Pat.
No, okay.
I
I
just want to
had
see if he has more than one murder board. As we all, anybody who's watched Only Murders in the Building knows, sometimes you need more than one.
he's got Custer had it coming written right there. So Custer's last stand. He knows. He knows.
I mean, we've talked about it a little bit, but like it is kind of a brutal book. It's not
Yeah.
for the faint of heart. It's one of those things where I often do want to recommend to people like, "Oh, you like this writer's like big two mainstream superhero stuff. You should read this thing by them instead." This is one where I would not straight up tell you go read this if you liked Thor because like there's a lot
Yeah.
less of a dude following around this woman that he's like kind of weirdly in love with, but like he's being really weird about it and like he's beating up all the people
Yeah.
that she's having sex with. Like
Yeah.
that's weird.
So, I'm glad you pointed that out because I thought this was interesting in the fact that out of all the dangerous things that this guy's doing, that Dash is doing, from the very first moment you're introduced to him, to the end of this comic book, the most dangerous thing he did was sleep with that gal.
Oh yeah. Yep.
You know, after the day she had, you know, like she was putting some miles on that day.
Oh, I see what
And
you're saying. I was
yeah.
saying dangerous in that now her dad
The
is going to
repercussions,
find out at
yeah.
some point.
Oh no.
But I see what you're saying.
We've all seen Forrest Gump. We know what that can lead to. Anyways, I thought that was the most dangerous thing that he did. That's y'all are just gonna have to read it to find out. But yeah, that scene, it's pretty cringeworthy at the same time. But like also like the whole like, what exactly do you want from me? I want you to get out of my face. Last I checked, you broke into my house. Like that was such a interesting turn of events. But I was also like, yeah, all right, I could kind of
Their
see where this is
dynamic
going.
is weird and remains weird for quite a while. So
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, you watched her pee. What else do you
Yeah.
ever know?
Yeah,
you're
Yeah.
committed.
You're committed at that point. That was that might
My
have been
wife
the
and I haven't
moment.
done that yet. We just watched that episode of How I Met Your Mother where Marshall and Lily are
What?
stuck in a bathroom and
Oh.
and Lily's like, I gotta pee. And it's like, we haven't done this before, no. A very different take on this story than the How I Met Your Mother version.
Yeah, that would be an interesting pilot episode. I would say that little cutaway panel when she says that was the first part. Like the rest of it, I was like, okay, we got some mob violence and okay, and then that was said, and I was like, Matt, what the fuck did you
What the fuck are we reading?
give me here?
I
Like, what is
was wondering
happening?
for both of you to some degree. I was like, because I was rereading it, I was like, oh yeah, this book's pretty fucking grim. Like it's
Yeah.
pretty brutal. It's really good though. I don't know. We'll see. So like I did understand what I was doing to us when I did it.
I did tell some people though, because I read it the other day to prep for today. Right, like I read it earlier. That'd be silly if I read it. I had a nap to take today, as we
Yeah.
discussed before this. Um,
Very
like-
important things to get done today.
yeah. And nap was on the top of the list. No, I was before I left work today. I was telling them I was like, yeah, I'm recording a podcast episode later today, and I was like, this is the book that we're doing, and they were like, oh well, is it good? And I was like, yes, but, and I was like, without ruining what we're going to talk about on the show, and by the way, you should check out the show, and I gave him the link and all that because I'm a good sport like that, and
We appreciate you, Tyler.
I try. I
It's
said
rated R. Yeah.
yes. I did say I was like, this one's not for the faint of heart.
Mhm.
Parental guidance is definitely necessary. But I said what's funny is I was like, if you listen to like past episodes of this show, with Matt and Pat and their various guest hosts, I was like, a lot of them will bring in the DC and like the independent comics and all that, and then I'm always that jerk who's like, bring it on back to Marvel. We're going back to the mainstream. And then this time got talked into doing this Vertigo one. And it was so far out of my wheelhouse that I think that's just why it surprised me. It's not bad. It
Sure.
just is so far out of what I normally buy and read. And that's saying a lot when like most of what I buy is Ghost Rider. You know what I mean? And Ghost Rider's not always like the last Ghost Rider run before this whole Wolverine spirit of Berserker or whatever the hell they're calling it. They had some grotesque comics. Like some of it was pretty gross. Like I'm not gonna lie, I was like, ooh, that's stomach churning, right? But this was like, oh, this is just downer. This is just a downer, but it's good.
Yeah, this is a different thing, right? Where it's not
Yeah.
even like, I don't know. There are times, I guess, where it's gross. Like that's true, but I think it's more the brutality and not even
Yeah.
like always the physical brutality, like just like the spiritual brutality, if that makes sense, like the emotional brutality.
Yeah.
Well, also just like the fantastical nature of other comic books that Jason Aaron has written. It removes.
Yeah.
It distances you. It's not. This is so real world. Like it's so grounded that it's just
Yeah.
it hits you a lot
This-
I think
different.
the art, which we haven't talked about as much, and I was looking for a chance to sneak in some discussion, so here we go. Like, I think the art does a really good job of conveying that feeling. Like, I
Yeah.
think Arm Guerrera does like a lot of like very just slightly exaggerated like facial expressions and movements to the point where like people are a bit more animated than they would look like, and like a lot of really like deep dark blacks, like a lot of like
Yeah.
really solid heavy inks that like either cast people in shadow or like
A lot of like
I don't know.
noir-esque shots of
Yeah,
people.
very
Yeah.
noir-esque is a good description of it. Like, and then I think Lee Lowridge is doing a great job on colors also to kind of match that tone where everything's for the most part a little bit muted, like a little bit more real world.
Mhm.
Except for like some of the, I don't know, some of the scenes where there's like a little bit more of emotional color, or like some of the casino stuff. The flashbacks obviously have that like sort of more grayscale, blue scale sort of thing going on that we were talking about too. Like, I think the art does a lot to convey the fact that this is real people living in a real shitty place, just trying to do their best to figure it out in a lot of cases, or to just punch people in the face in some other cases.
Yeah, I
Sure.
agree. It does make it feel like this could be happening not too far away, right? Like this feels like it almost could have been taken right out of, you know, reality, which is probably what makes it so unsettling. Is that it doesn't seem that far off, right? Like but the art, the colors, I mean, like it feels heavy. It does, and that's why, like I said, if you read it, you could tell, like when it starts to slow its pace down, because the color shift is so wild, that it's like this is present day. We're kind of slowing down a little bit, but like here's where there's kind of some light at the end of the tunnel, and then it gets heavy and dark again. Uh, I like it. I like the art a lot. I thought that was a highlight of it for sure. For being a low light, you know what I mean? Like it's yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of dark colors and a lot of yeah. Boy, we're trying. We're trying. Remember, I took a nap before this. We're trying.
We're all tired old men today, so we're doing our best. But I was just looking at the scene again where falls down and Dash are like being ambushed in what was ostensibly a meth lab, but is actually just a bunch of dudes in a barn with guns. And like
Yes.
there's just like there's the sweat on Dash's forehead to make it feel like a little bit more real. Like everyone's facial expressions are just like just a little bit exaggerated, but also just like very I don't know, like you see how much pain they're in as a result of that, like when they're being shot and stuff. Like, and there's a lot of really good pacing stuff too that I think Gira is doing of like panning out a little bit when it makes sense to show action and then like closing in on people's faces for shots that are more of like you want to see people's reactions or emotions in certain scenes. So I think a lot of that does really good work to make it hit you in the face and be like we were talking about, like to feel as heavy as the subject matter it's portraying.
Mhm.
Yeah, and then like some of it, like if you're really paying attention to like the background stuff too, like there was no lack of attention to detail, right? Like there's the one issue where Dash is going around beating up all the dudes, for I don't know, sleeping with his wannabe girlfriend or love interest or whatever you want to call. And like, there's the scene, like, or no, this was when his mom's looking for him, and I think it's the same issue. It is the same issue. I bet.
Yeah, that's the same one because there are a couple really great pages in there. I'm gonna let you talk about them because I think you're probably gonna pick at least one of the ones I was thinking about.
But like, just the part where like the girl is like holding the crowbar. Oh, he was just here. He forgot this, and then you like look at the
Oh god,
background and
that
the dude.
panel's so good.
Yeah. I'm trying to find where that is. I'm like paging through, but
It's
like,
so like bleakly funny.
yeah,
Yeah, it's she's just driving around and it's like I think it's a 4 panel page. Oh yeah, I found it. It's page 87 in my volume at least, and like it just gives different timestamps throughout the day as she's kind of like his mom is following him around town trying to find him. And it's the third panel and she just says, "He was here. He talked with my daddy. He forgot this." This being the crowbar, and that dude's just like beat to hell, like stuffed into the like front door of his truck, like sitting on the ground.
Yes, yeah. And you're like, yeah, okay, I just found it. And again, that's like one of those pages where it's the coloring is like you could tell that it's early morning and it's like there might be some optimism to this day because his mom is looking for her and all that, but nope, it's just going to continue to go downhill and it gets darker and it gets darker as it goes on. So like the coloring and stuff is just so well done in it, to like kind of give that scope, but no lack of attention to detail on some of the stuff here, and that just made it so cool. But yeah, those were the issues where it really kind of hooked me, were those later ones. So if you can make it to those, you're well on your way.
So a couple other pages in that issue specifically that I really liked is there's the page where Gina's kind of thinking back through like all of her memories of Dash, and like a lot of them are him being an asshole, it looks like, also, or like them being assholes to each other, but like also some happier moments where like he's riding a horse for the first time, it looks like,
Yeah,
and he's like got a bubble bath. And just like that page where it's just like all of those colliding memories of like sweet memories and bittersweet memories and just like awful memories at the same time. Like, I don't know, that really hit me. And then the page right after it has that like mirrored composition of them kind of like looking and walking in different directions across their 3 panels down the next page.
yep,
I think that's
yeah,
really well done too. On a slightly funnier note, I've discovered for the first time on this read, I think actually that Nitz is reading a. Well, I knew he was reading a porno when they're like driving to the meeting in issue 1, but I didn't realize it had a title. The title is "What's in My Ass."
Mhm.
yes, I believe that is what it says. Yeah, yeah. There's some fun stuff if you like pay attention to some of the little stuff that is like almost like Easter eggs, but they're hilarious. Yeah, like I said, and even like that last page with to talk about coloring or whatever, just the reds and the oranges and the darkness of the scalp and the rocks, and that is a grotesque way to end a book. But boy, does
Yeah,
it work! Like
and like
it's like yeah,
it's like a desert sunrise. It's supposed to
yeah,
be beautiful, and it's just
yeah,
chilling.
yeah, yeah. I thoroughly enjoy the art. That part, if the grim tale scares you away, the art will kind of keep you in my humble opinion.
I would say my last question is, and I think for you, Tyler, we kind of touched on this a little bit, but are there like what threads are you interested in seeing playing out in like volume 2 and onward?
I think I'm on the same kind of fence as Pat. Well, I doubt Pat's going to be reading any more of these, but I want to. I give me something to cheer for. Give me something because right now it's hard, but I do want to see.
Who killed mom?
Well, yeah, that for sure because it wasn't Red Crow, right? Um,
Could have sent someone to do it.
he could have sent somebody like so he could have been like responsible for it, but it wasn't him. So there's no poetic justice there, right? And or anything along those lines. Um, so I want to know what happens there. I want to see what happens, and this is going to sound weird because we brought him up earlier, but there has to be a reason they introduced you to Falls Down and Poor Bear, right? Like they have to have some sort of significance down the road
Oh yeah,
for being
both of
like
them
the
will show up and will be around, will be
yeah.
central in various forms and fashions.
And I think like those two are the two that are like the linchpins of here's that sliver of hope that you're looking for. Can that spread when things start to go awry? But yeah, I kind of want to just see where it goes. Like, okay, the domino, like you said, the dominoes have been set up. I'm kind of curious to see how they fall. There's not one particular thing. Obviously, the main story is find a way to bring Red Crow to justice for this murder that happened a long time ago, but also for him just being a terrible human being and all these other
I don't
things
know,
that he's
man. Like
done.
I'm not even really rooting for Nitz though. Nitz is an asshole.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. Like, who do we cheer for? What like? So I'm curious to know what happens, but also give me somebody to root for. That's what I think I'm looking for, in the same sense of these are terrible people doing terrible things. Give me a reason to cheer, but also I'm just intrigued enough to figure out what I'm cheering for. Like I want to know what am I going to end up cheering for at some point, just from the mystery of it all. Like
Yeah.
I'm curious. Which is like I said, that's good. That means it hooked you. It did what it was supposed to do, and like I said, it's definitely not going to be for everybody, and but I think it's well done, and I'm going to go get the others at some point. Like I'm gonna read them. Maybe not right away, maybe not tomorrow, because you do have to be in the right mood for it. Like I said, maybe not the Christmas episode we all thought we were going to be recording here.
Well,
But
it doesn't come out
Don't worry,
till.
this is January. Yeah.
Yeah, this
this
will be in
This
January.
one will
Right.
come out in February, actually, right?
Oh, even better. So just
the
like my
best
last,
ones. Yeah.
The
just
Valentine's
like
Day episode. Oh God.
yeah, I am doing great with Valentine's Day episodes. Let me tell you, between this and Ring of Fire, we are rolling. I as opposed to that one, I do want to read more of this, and just kind of see where it goes. It's like I said, it's a train wreck you can't look away from, but it's a really well written train wreck, if that makes sense.
Pat, you got any threads that if I dropped Volume 2 off at your house, you would be compelled to read it because of?
Well, if you look at the third to last page of Catcher and his trailer on his murder wall, the top panel, if you look at that top leftmost news article,
Mhm.
I want to know where in Wisconsin that white buffalo was born.
Was born.
So hopefully that comes up.
That's
Ooh.
fair.
Can't guarantee that one gets solved for you, Pat.
Well,
but
dang.
the only way to find out is to read the whole series.
Okay. Oh, well, they got me.
So
They got
Gotta
me.
get hooked on something.
So I will say, kind of speaking to your like the discussion we've been having throughout of like there are very few decent people in this. What I think kind of hooked me the first time I read it, and I think is what brings me back to reading this every once in a while again, is like, can Dash become a decent person? Because like you see glimmers of it, right? Like he's interacting with Dino and they're busting that meth lab, and he's just like, okay, cool, that's fine. You get off this time. Like I'm gonna yell at you and pretend to be a tough guy about it, but like I'm giving you a second chance. I'm trying to think. There's one other instance in here where I'm like, yeah, Dash is all right. Like he saves Falls down when they go into that meth lab, when he doesn't specifically have to. Like that sort. Like there are like glimmers of him being a decent dude, while there are also many more glimmers of him just being like waiting to explode. So like like which way is he gonna fall? I feel like is a central question of the book, and I don't know. That always kind of keeps pulling me through it whenever I come back to do a reread. Is like, will Dash become the decent person he could be, or will he succumb to, I don't know, kind of like the shittiness and instability around him?
Yeah, I could see that. See that. 'Cause you got, like I said, give me somebody to cheer for.
Yeah, that's sort of why I mentioned it. Is like I think as the book goes on, there is a bit more of cheering for Dash in a way that there is less so of in this one where he like shoves his mom against a police car and calls her a bitch. I think like that's not good. That's not okay.
Oh man, we should have done this for Mother's Day. We did not plan this well.
I'm heartened also that like the experiment of give Tyler a Jason Aaron comic that's not a superhero comic does seem to have worked, because I always wonder about that with these things too, where it's like you like a specific author, but comics are such that specific authors write very different things. Like, oh gosh, there was a month where I think Chip Zdarsky recently was putting out like Public Domain, which is like comic about making comics kind of. Batman, where Batman was fighting a robot version of Batman that had gone across the multiverse. And there was like a third one that was just like such a wild spread of things for him to have written in 1 month. But like that's like comic creators get to do that in a way that I feel like novelists and like other creative people don't often, where they have to pick a lane. Like it's weird that you could like Jason Aaron Thor, and I think very respectably come to this book and be like, nah, this isn't for me at all. Like, no, thank you. So I was interested to see how that experiment worked out. I kind of thought you would like it, Tyler, so I'm glad you did.
Yeah, I did. And actually, I'm the fact that you were like, "Hey, we're gonna try this thing with Jason Aaron." I tried to read talk about holding grudges. All right, I tried to read a comic by Jason Aaron that was not a superhero comic called Sound and Fury. And the reason I bring this up is because it was co-written by one of my favorite country music artists, Sturgill Simpson. So I went one day reading this. Holy crap! My favorite comic writer and my favorite country artist are writing a comic book together. I need to read this. And there's also a anime on Netflix that's based on this comic. And there's an album called Sound and Fury based on this comic. So like this whole
Oh my
thing,
gosh,
right?
it's a multimedia juggernaut.
It is, right? So I pre-ordered this thing well before it was like gonna come out, and I got it to where I was supposed to get a signed copy, signed by Jason Aaron and Sturgill Simpson from the publisher Z2 Comics. Way back when. And it never showed up. I never got it, and then my $100 has vanished forever. And I like emailed Z2 Comics. I never got any response or anything like, "Hey, how come I never got this?" So, I kind of was like, I'm never reading independent publishers because screw those guys.
Oh man, I mean, it is kind of wild, especially when you get out into the fringes, which I think Z2 kind of is, of like so many of these things pop up, are good for like a few years, and then just kind of fold sometimes out of nowhere. Sometimes you see it coming and they manage to linger for a while, but yeah, I'm sorry that happened to you, because it is unfortunate that does happen, but it does.
Listen, all I hope now is that somewhere, somehow, Jason Aaron and Sturgill Simpson hear this episode, and they make things right, and they
get you a copy.
They track me down.
I'm looking at it right now,
Make it
and
right.
it's in Jason Aaron's web store, and I think you can get him at least to sign stuff that's in his web store. I think I still get his newsletter, but I know that he has done like he'll sign stuff that goes out from the web store. So I'm just gonna write that down for future reference. We'll
Put
see.
that in the show notes for the website. You know.
Well, this Christmas might be a little late, but next Christmas.
But no, so I did attempt to branch out into the Jason Aaron multiverse, if you will, of things that he's written, because I do enjoy. I think the only thing that he's ever written where I've been a little meh about was Original Sin, and you can go back into the episode logs and listen to how we felt about that.
Well, that's actually really wildly like the inverse of this, where Original Sin is like a big Marvel Comics corporate crossover event where like this, where you're doing whatever, like not whatever you want, but whatever you want within reason. There's so many like weird little like, I don't know, conditions that you have to meet when you're doing a crossover. Like it's got to be this long, and it's got to have this character in it and this character in it, and like, oh, you got to make sure you get this character in, and like, oh, you can use that villain but you can't use this villain, like that sort of thing. Like it's like such a wildly different beast of a comic book like writing experience, I'm sure.
But also credit to Jason Aaron in a sense that, you know, like I said, I'm a fan of his. I'm not gonna lie, that I've enjoyed 90% of what I've read. But also credit to him for being able to work within both boundaries. You know, like free for all versus, and we kind of started the show with that too, of just being like, it's good. Whatever he's writing you got a pretty good chance it's going to be entertaining. So credit to this book for being that still.
Yeah, and another writer actually who's doing like a pretty solid spread of stuff at this point, because he's got that Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles book we were talking about before we started recording, which seems good. He's got Absolute Superman right now, which I've read the first 2 issues of, I think, so far. Good. Has at least one creator-owned thing that I think might have just wrapped up at Boom that was like a post-apocalyptic end-of-the-world thing. But like through the eyes of like a couple over time, like going back and forth.
Fun fact, that was on sale on Amazon because my Alexa told me that the other day, and I cannot think of the title right now.
It is Once Upon a Time at the End of the World.
Yep. Yeah.
That I know because I did recently see it in a shop.
Yeah.
And then like I think it's starting a new fantasy thing at Image early next year. So like, yeah, doing a spread of books at this point because comics are great.
Yeah. 100%.
All right, I think that brings us to recommendations. Tyler, do you have recommendations for if someone like this, what they should read or watch or listen to or whatever?
Well, as is tradition, no, I don't.
You got ancillary recommendations.
Mostly because this was so far out of my wheelhouse. So like as I was reading it, I was like, I'm not gonna have any recommendations. I have no idea. But I will suggest other things. And those things are the book Born a Crime by Trevor Noah, the former Daily Show host. That is very compelling. I'm listening to the audiobook, which I would highly recommend if you're going to do it, because Trevor adds some extra spice to it and stuff when he's doing accents and all that good stuff. So again, not a comic book, but kind of a downer. You wouldn't think it would be because he's a comedian, but it's a very interesting look at his life. The other thing I'm going to suggest is because we have to, is Marvel Rivals. If you have not played Marvel Rivals by the time you hear this show, you're missing out on a fantastic. Listen,
some people
Pat,
tried to play it.
I
And it
want to
just didn't work out
apologize
for
that
them,
I don't know
so.
how computers work. All right, the fact that I can get onto here and record with you guys is a minor miracle. And people still don't know how I have a Twitch channel because I don't even know how I have I don't know how this works. I don't. Pat sent me a message on Steam, and it took me 20 minutes to figure out how to open it.
I downloaded Marvel Rivals. Like, oh, I've seen Tyler play
20
this. I'll
minutes
just
later, I
download it and
message him
we'll
going,
play.
Pat, I just saw this
Message him.
because I couldn't figure out how to open it. And that is the honest to God truth because I don't know how Steam.
I believe it.
I am
It's all
not
good.
smart. All right. Like I'm an idiot. So those are my suggestions. Has nothing to do with Scalped. Read Scalped, but also those are my two suggestions for this episode.
What do you got?
If you want to read more about like reservation crime drama kind of stuff, I've really enjoyed the Tony Hillerman crime novels. It's about Joe Leaphorn and Jim Chi are tribal police out in New Mexico, the Navajo reservation out there. It's a whole series of books. They're all really well done. Highly recommend. It isn't as like heavy as this. It isn't as like gritty, but it's still the characters are great. The stories are interesting. The mysteries are great. So yeah, I highly recommend that. And like we were talking about earlier, The Wire. If you haven't watched it, there's no reason why you shouldn't go watch it. It's some of the best TV that's ever been.
I will say that is a first episode that you gotta drag through sometimes, depending on what kind of mood you're in. Like on various watches,
Sure.
I've either gotten through it no problem, or I've been like, man, this is a little bit of a slog. But episode 2, you're good to go.
Yeah. So that's mine.
I just want people to read Scalped. I think that's where I'm at. Like, if you like this book at all, you should keep reading it because it gets better. Like you said, there's a lot of like deeper exploration to a lot of the characters that you've only seen a little bit of here. There's a lot of like, I don't know, people have journeys. But yeah, Scalped is an all timer for me. So I am glad that we talked about the first volume at least, because I'm always happy to talk about Scalped.
I'm looking forward. Like I said, I got I looked them up. They are now in my Amazon history, so I don't forget. But I will be tracking them down at some point in time for sure.
Nice. Well, I think that is where we will leave this month's discussion of Scalped. As always, if you want to get in touch with Pat or myself, you can email us at waitingonthetrade@gmail.com. You can also find more comics-related goodness, including an essay about the first issue of Scalped that I'm definitely going to put in the show notes at mattreadscomics.com. Tyler, thank you for venturing outside your comic comfort zone with us.
No
I
problem.
appreciate it.
I'd say any time, but let's taper that expectation a little bit. But I would do it again.